Yo, what's up guys? So, for this one, you can expect to see soul level 40 to 60 invasions. Everything with the Claymore is pretty much from launch night, and all of the other builds are from throughout launch week. Speaking of which, I've had a really great time throughout launch week. A much better experience than I ever could have expected to have. And I'm not sure if the problems in this remaster have just been overshadowed by the feelings of nostalgia, the joy of playing through this essentially for the first time again, or if it's just not as bad as I was kind of expecting things to be. I'm not entirely sure just yet. But things are definitely a bit wacky, and I'd certainly like to talk about some of the issues I have with the remaster, despite being pretty positive at the moment. I definitely have that build-making fever. I'm making too many builds, and I'm already kind of getting a bit fatigued from doing it. I forgot how easy it is to just continually come up with new ideas to basically play the same thing, but change it just by 2 or 3 points here or there. But overall, yeah, I mean, I've just really been indulging in invasions, and all of these characters are trying to be meta characters, assuming this matchmaking system is going to allow for it. And from what I understand, the weapon matchmaking isn't really doing anything right now, necessarily. And we still have the old school way, I think, at least for the most part, of soul level matchmaking. We're still able to invade all the way up. So this isn't as restrictive as it is in Dark Souls 3, which I'm really thankful for that, because if it was as restrictive as Dark Souls 3, this game would die out very fast than it otherwise would or should. But because we're still able to invade all the way up, to 713, no matter what level we are, then technically we should still be getting some activity, months or perhaps years down the road. So that's good news. Now the weapon matchmaking, I'm not really sure what's going on entirely. I'll talk about it actually a little bit here. But I'd like to kind of stop and talk about some of the builds when the time is right. There's not a whole lot to say here. Everything's pretty straightforward. And none of these characters, again, are really optimized for low level. I mean, they're powerful for low level, don't get me wrong, but they're not really built for this. I'm really aimed at 120 to 135 for all of these guys. In fact, I've already leveled up one of these characters to like soul level 110. So, but this character, the main issue for me, without using Ring of Favor, I wanted to make sure I had enough stamina to do the 3-hit Claymore combo. And I'm sure most of you guys already know what I'm talking about, but the 2-handed Claymore can running attack into R2, into R1 for some pretty devastating damage. And it's not something I would say to use in a duel necessarily, because it's probably going to get you killed. But in the invasion environment, it's absolutely critical knowledge to have with this weapon. A lot of really sweet kills to be had with that combo. And on top of that, I'm kind of swapping out the Hornet for Dark Woodgrain Ring just when I'm feeling like it. Most of the time I'm using Hornet. Dark Woodgrain Ring it's cool. I really like it with the Claymore. It's not really my style, though, and I don't have a lot of experience utilizing this ring, so I definitely need to glean a little bit more experience to fully understand how to take advantage of this thing. Not like it's too deep or anything like that, but and dare I say that Dark Woodgrain in the remaster doesn't feel like it's quite as nasty as the PS3 version of the game, as the original version of Dark Souls. It feels like it's slightly easier to hit people that are just kind of flipping around everywhere. That could just be me. It could just be because I'm still basically a low-level invader at this point. I'm still stuck in that Dark Souls 3 rut I'm really hoping that when all of these characters are closer to meta, that I'm still going to be able to get some consistent invasions in a number of different areas, because that's the main thing for me. You know, I'm pretty much always invading in the meta range, but it's important to me to have some variety and some actual activity and not be restricted to just sitting in 1 or 2 areas of the game. And it's kind of been that way since Dark Souls 3. I've kind of been stuck as a low-level invader since like the mid to end days. For me, in Dark Souls 3, I don't expect to be going back anytime soon. I think this has turned out a lot better than I expected. I'll say that the multiplayer stability is definitely beyond expectations. Things are perhaps the best they've ever been. Just in terms of multiplayer stability, connectivity. There's a few things here and there that are a bit bizarre, but there's nothing like in Dark Souls 3 that makes the game ugly to play. So I'm really grateful for that, and I might even say, I might go so far as to say that this is the best online has been in the Souls games. I'm not saying the PvP is the best or anything, but I'm saying that the online component is pretty optimized overall for a Souls game. I know that's not saying much, but it's pretty damn good, and I've been enjoying it. And I've also noticed the absolute beauty of not having people running around with Divine Blessings or Elizabeth Mushrooms. It's absolutely been noticed and appreciated, and I really shudder to think what this would be like if we still had people, duping Divine Blessings and all that. It would be terrible. But speaking of duping, and this isn't something I really care too much about, but I haven't used cloud saves yet on any of my characters. I have something like 5 or 6 characters now, and I think we're far enough in where, if you're a vet and you want to dupe some items to save some time making a build, I don't have any problem with it. But I really would have preferred for at least a few days to pass before there were so many people duping in this iteration of the game. Again, I think if you're a veteran, if you put in your time making builds, that's one thing, dupe away, save some time, man. But when it's just such an easy method of duping items and it's widespread by day 1, and we have a lot of brand new players that are doing it, some of the time because they see, maybe their favorite streamer is just like saying it's a-okay to do. I mean, that's speaking from their perspective though, like as a veteran. They're talking about like, if you're a veteran of the game, if you played through enough times, sure, like duping will keep people around even. It can even be a positive thing, and I agree with that. But when we're talking about brand new players that are, they're just coming into this and they're duping items with their buds on, night 1, it's just it's souring the broth a little bit, and a lot of these guys are not going to be sticking around. No, it's actually working against people sticking around when it comes to affecting a brand new player, right? And I'm not trying to speak for other people here, but I do know it's a thing, and I've noticed so many people with clearly duped characters. They have no idea what they're doing, but they're already like super high level, like totally maxed out gear. And it's just, these guys really need to learn what it's like to make a build from scratch before indulging in item duping and stuff like that. It's going to keep people around longer. It's going to be better for, the longevity of the game, and just better for the player base. But yeah, that's just my brief thoughts on that. I don't think it's a big deal overall. It could have been a lot worse. If we still had Divine Blessings and Elizabeth Mushrooms as an issue, oh man. I don't miss those days at all, dude. Sorry about that. Needed to take a sip of coffee. But it's actually pretty rare where I can use, when I can use steps to my advantage in a Souls game. Because normally, you know, standing on a flight of stairs is gonna work against me. Obviously, steps are 99 times out of 100 gonna be a safe zone from critical damage. And, you know, this build is all about beating my opponent's face in with R1s, and pretty much only doing that. Because using the R2s on this weapon are absolutely terrible. Probably some of the worst R2s of any weapon in the game. It'd be really cool if you could combo an R2 into an R2. Then it might be usable, semi-usable. But the R1s, I mean, they're not anything to be taken lightly. And I was surprised that this guy had so much HP. But, I mean, a lot of people don't seem to realize that this thing is going to stagger you like a Mirakumo. It does 53 poise damage with two-handed R1s. And I can see why it's kind of deceptive to some people, because it looks kind of like, oh, look at this guy with this tiny little weapon, and then they get their face smashed in. But, I've kind of noticed that stun locks work a little bit differently here. And just real quickly as well, like any point down you see here, I mean, this is in the spirit of launch night. I do point down a bit, but it's kind of, I use gestures sparingly. I basically just run off at the end of a fight. I try to act as much like an NPC as possible. Of course, every now and then I gotta point down. And on launch night, I gotta be honest, guys, I was a little saucy. I was drinking, and I was throwing out some point downs. You gotta basically welcome people the proper way, and I was doing a lot of invasions in Sin's Fortress, and that was one of the worst plunge attacks that I can recall doing in recent years. But there's a couple things that I'd like to quickly talk about as well. Actually, let me talk about this build before I get to that. This build has a little bit more going for it than standard R1s. First of all, sitting at level 61, I'm rocking like 61 or 62 poise. I think that getting the 61 poise breakpoint is really what you want to shoot for at minimum when you're rocking an R1 build. Primarily because it's going to let you take 2 slashes from a katana and from a curved sword. I don't know if the falchion does a little bit more poise damage than other curved swords. I honestly do not know that. I'm not a curved sword vet or anything like that, but I do like it on a cleric build. But this build is headed for 50 faith, and I think, you know, for me, I like having a little bit of flexibility. I don't like being totally shut down by a group of spawn campers that are going to prevent me from buffing my weapon. You know, if you get shut down from not being able to buff up your weapon, then that's a problem as an invader, in my opinion. I like to at least have a snowball's chance in hell of, you know, throwing in Ring of the Sun's Firstborn for Wolfring, having Dusk Crown in, and just spamming Wog hard if I'm getting spawn camped. You know, I think a lot of groups, in fact, I know a lot of players won't be able to deal with that. And it'll give me at least a shot at creating some space as well. So I like having that flexibility in an R1 build, or just in a, not necessarily an R1 build, but in a buffed weapon build in general. And what's great about having the show tell is, you know, if you're doing this for invasions, you can actually use those R2s. You're going to get behind a lot of shields with those R2s, and it has a lot of range to it as well. The two-handed R2 with the show tell. Now in a duel, doing that R2, it's probably going to get you killed. But yeah, I'm pretty sure most players are going to reaction parry the R2 of the show tell. But there's a couple things that I'd like to talk about just real quickly, and it's amazing that I've gone this long without mentioning these things. But dead angles. This is something that I was really worried about going into this remaster. And for low-level invasions, I think that it's fine. Based off of my experiences so far with like 5 characters now invading at low level, I think it is just fine. There's definitely moments where you want to have them back. I don't think that it's a good change. I still don't like it, but just for low-level invasions, they're not really missed. You know what I mean? Seeing as twinking is still a thing, you're not really missing a whole lot from dead angles, other than you're killing people even faster. But for duels and stuff like that at the higher levels, you know, if we're using like Claymore at the high tiers of play, you know, not having the running attack dead angles, not having Murakumo dead angles, it's gonna hurt, you know, and I think that my opinion is definitely subject to change over time. But yeah, at the moment, it's not really bothering me as badly as I thought, so there's that. Now, matchmaking, I think that because they didn't go all the way with the Dark Souls 3 system, and I've already touched on this a little bit, you know, we're still able to, as far as I know, we're able to invade all the way up to 713. So me, on this set of characters here, level 40 to 60, I'm able to invade max level players still. So it's not going to absolutely bottleneck activity. And this game will actually be able to age better than I thought it would. And seeing as weapon matchmaking isn't really working either, activity should be flowing about as well as it ever should, or will like forever. I think we have a patch coming at some point. Not 100% on that. I don't know what they're gonna do, but I'd imagine they do something to fix this matchmaking system, at least to make it work as they probably intended, because right now it's not protecting twink invasions whatsoever. You're still invading Drake Sword bros with, you know, your plus 15 buff Shotel. So it's still something that happens. But of course, you're invading people that have max upgrade weapons as on top of that. So, I mean, you're getting people all over the place. That's the way I think it should be. That's the way it was in the original Dark Souls 1. So honestly, as far as I can tell, just overall, the matchmaking system doesn't really seem to be much different than what it actually was in the original. Other than you're getting low-level hosts that are summoning in their max-level phantoms with the delicious Dark Souls 3 password matchmaking and all that. Which isn't really that big of an issue, to me at least. I mean, if you're twinked out, if you at least have your weapon upgraded to max, it's normally something you can deal with, because they're scaled down, you know? But that's pretty much it, I think, for this one, guys. We've pretty much talked about all the major points that I wanted to, which is rare for something like this, even when I'm talking for 18 minutes. But I've got some live invasions for you here at the end. Apologies for the audio quality. That's why some of these were muted, by the way, some of these clips. I probably should have addressed that at the beginning of the video instead of the very end. But yeah, I'm out of here, guys. We'll be back with some, like, soul level 100 invasions or something very soon. Take care. What? Okay. What the fuck? It's right above me. What a name. Son of a fucking bitch. That Red just fucking ripped someone? Yes, he did. Goodbye, White. That backstab was not necessary whatsoever. Oh! Hello, friend. I think you should jump to your death, because... I mean, you might as well. The end is near. Bye-bye. Yep.